Woohoo!
Yeah, so Skiff is a thing that I never heard of until Notion acquired them.
Basically the same. Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing. It's a cool thing.
It was kind of funny. I was in the Obsidian Discord server and I was asking about calendars inside of Obsidian for Morgan's sake, and I got a message from someone saying that they use Skiff, and they are looking to use Skiff's calendar and email and docs, and I was like, okay, never heard of Skiff, don't know what this thing is. And then I got a ping inside of Discord this morning saying, oh, I said I use Skiff. Well, not anymore. Because literally 4 hours after they'd sent the message about Skiff, Notion go and acquire Skiff.
I am I am so intrigued at why. I have a few hypotheses, but
Yeah, so from my brief exploration this morning, like I knew what Skiff was enough to bucket it if I needed to bucket it, but I don't know what affordances it really offers. So Skiff is essentially offline or encrypted stuff. Like it does email, it has a calendar in there, but you can't connect to a Google Calendar and Outlook calendar because it's all encrypted. So it's its own calendar, which is kind of, I think, if I'm getting the terminology right here, I think it's just CalDAV, which is like a Linux sort of calendar. You have the file, and that's your calendar. I think that's what Skiff's doing. Then it's got private docs, which I mean, that just sounds like Obsidian to me. And then you've got the email, which, from what I can see, is what most people use Skiff for, is an end-to-end encrypted email service. My
hmm,
understanding of how that works is there is an email that gets sent to you, which anyone can read. The Skiff, in this case the service, then gets that email. They could copy it if they wanted to, but instead they choose to encrypt it and then they put it in your email service. So even though it is private and encrypted, they could still copy it if they wanted to. And if they do copy it, then they have access to all of the information and stuff. So I personally look at Skiff and go, I don't see why I would use it, which is probably why I haven't come across it before. But it begs the question, why in the world have Notion acquired Skiff?
that's the thing I find really confusing.
Because when you look at Notion, it's online for everyone to
Yeah,
see.
maybe, maybe they're trying to get, the online version up, maybe they're trying to ha find offline mode. And
That
maybe using their team to help to make, because one of the things I think that Notion is constantly criticized about is how unprotected it is. So perhaps that's what they're trying to do by bringing the Skiff team on.
hmm.
I don't know. Are they going to have a Notion email? I don't know. It just, it's probably that. But also, I'm like, but that doesn't seem to link from my understanding of Skiff at all.
So
So, like,
I think the email point and the offline privacy point are the two ones that I think they're thinking about as a business. And where I'm intrigued to see where it goes is that when you look at Notion and you look at something like Google Suite has a calendar app, Notion now has a calendar app. Google has Google Docs, Notion is Docs.
docs, yeah.
So if they've now acquired Skiff, well, now they'll have a calendar. So are Notion trying to compete with the Google suite of tools? Because, I
Hmm.
mean, it's nowhere near Excel or Google Sheets, but they've got database functionality and they've added a fair amount of formulas. So are they trying to compete with suite tools?
Maybe. It's that workspace idea, isn't it, that they've had for years?
Yeah. And that is a really intriguing development if they do move in that direction, because now you've got a productivity tool that is turning into what looks like a suite of tools, because you've got Notion, Notion Calendar. If Skiff turns out to be Notion Email, well, now you've got all of the main apps of a suite, and Notion already have AI in there.
That's cool, but I don't know.
So instead of buying your Google Suite account, you buy your Notion
I Notion
account,
Suite, yeah.
your
But
Notion
their
workspace.
marketing is saying connected workspace, so
Hmm.
I think they're trying to do exactly that.
exactly. And I mean, to be fair, they are big enough to do it. They're competent enough
Yeah.
to do it as a team. They've
Mm,
got the brand recognition, they've got the support, they've got everything they would need to really challenge them. And there's not many people that would challenge Microsoft and Google for their suite of tools.
mm,
Well, not to my knowledge anyway. Most of the
yeah.
tools that try and challenge them, they challenge them on specific ones, i.e., this is a calendar app, this is an email service. That's how Notion started off. But maybe Notion are trying to compete.
Yeah, I do worry about that though.
In what way?
I don't know, it just seems maybe I'm still in the old days of like when this app was a little startup trying to get itself going. I am much less interested as it grows bigger and bigger. It's probably why I still love Obsidian because it's little and it's
But it's not.
yeah, no, it's not little, it's huge. When you're in that space, it's huge. So I still remember the days when I
So
mentioned Notion.
I'm going to
Uh,
challenge you very quickly on the Obsidian bit. I've been working with some people from academia and all that sort of stuff, and they use Obsidian, and they're talking about loads of other people that use Obsidian, but they don't use Discord because they don't know really what it is. They don't use Reddit because again they don't know really what it is, and they've come across Obsidian from either a couple of videos or recommendations of people. So I think Obsidian is far bigger than we really know it is
but
because
it's
of the
not
amount of people.
marketed. That's
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not in
Exactly.
the marketing eye. Whereas Notion blew up, went crazy, and is now being marketed everywhere.
See it in like the underground being marketed. Posters. London Underground for context.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I remember a time when I used to mention Notion, and people were like, "What's that?" Now everyone and their mother mentions this. It's like, ugh. Yes, but no one's actually talking about whether it's a good fit. Because of course, part of my work is a tech and systems coach in a group. And I'm just looking at it, and everyone's like, oh, Asana, Trello, and Notion now. Notion is one of the first things that it's like you can use Notion. I'm like, have you read what they've said? They are really overwhelmed. There is too much going on for them, etc., etc. And you want to throw Notion at them. This is not an app problem. This is something very like, sure, yeah, beautiful, Notion, woohoo. But just the instant going towards an app and going towards an app like Notion. I was talking to my client and they're like, I don't really like Notion. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm not surprised. I don't like
I've had
Notion. They're
conversations
like,
like that this week as
I
well.
know. I know. You shouldn't like Notion because it's not for you. It's definitely 1,000,000% not for you. You need more flexibility than Notion can provide. What do you mean more flexibility? I thought Notion was really flexible. Oh, yeah, as in many ways it's flexible, but also it's incredibly constraining in others. There are things that you just cannot do in oh, so what do you use? I don't use Notion anymore. Oh, right, what do you use? I just use Morgen. Well, why do you do that? Because I'm always in my calendar. I'm always touching my calendar. I'm always looking at my calendar. Okay, fine, but is it not overwhelming? I'm like, no, because I know where everything goes and I can move things around. And if I need to, I can close some of the task kind of categories and then it's not there and then I'm okay. And then when I need it, I'll look at it. Then I can just look at the day. Then I can look at the week. Then I can look at 14 days. Like I can look at 10 days in advance without having to fiddle around too much. How fucking cool is that? That has been something that I've been using a lot. So I can see the next 10 days. Because 7 days isn't quite enough, isn't quite enough. And then you've got 10 days, it's just like, okay, I like that now. It's just extra couple of days on the end that I can pop and see. But anyway,
Interesting.
that's
Yeah, no,
recommended.
I
Morgan said,
hardly ever use that.
yeah, I do. I really like it, especially when I'm planning.
See, I'm in a month view when I'm planning.
I find the monthly overwhelming, unless
I
I
do
own
use a
like
calendar set. Like when I'm in my month
no,
view, I'm
I'm
like,
not. I'm not much of the calendar sets. I had to move some stuff over because I was talking to my other half, and they were just like, "I don't want to look at your calendar. It's overwhelming. I don't want to look at the calendar because I just can't. It's too overwhelming." I'm like, "What do you mean it's overwhelming?" I opened it up and I realized I had all of the time blocks on that same calendar, and they were just like, "This is just, I can't see, I can't think, I can't." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's true." Because for me, I see them there, but I don't see them there. They're
Yeah.
just there because I'm like, oh, that'll go here now. Oh, that can go in this
You
block.
have
Oh,
expertise in that environment. You're
yeah.
familiar with the information, so it's not an
So I
overwhelm.
moved it to my actions calendar. They're much happier now. I can't see any of your events. I'm like, oh yeah, good point. All you just see is block, 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 block.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like with, I was having a conversation with one of the people in the Morgen, and they were saying that they wanted to be like they didn't understand why we had to go to Google Calendar because they were using Google to add a new calendar. Why you can't do it in Morgan? I'm like, but why would you want to add a calendar in Morgan? Like once you've made your calendars, why do you need to go and make a new calendar? We went backwards and forwards. And they got to the point where they were like, "Ah, that's actually a really good question. I probably need to address this." I'm like, "Yeah, but I but they were using different calendars for colors. But if you want to change the calendar of an event in Morgan, just use a tag or change the color in Morgan. You don't need to go back to Google Calendar to change the color. If you're using tasks and you want a color, use a task list or use a calendar. Like you can do that. And they were like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that because they're so uh, indoctrinated.
Yeah.
They're so used to using Google Calendar and, oh, no, I need to change this and I need to go into the setting. I'm like, no, you really don't. And with the calendar sets, when so there's a video coming out on Monday, which will be out by the time this goes live, me talking about Notion Calendar. I don't know whether you've seen it beforehand, but I gave my honest views on it. And having all the calendars on the side, to me, it's just a waste of space. Like, pushing there, I want to see that, I don't want to see that, I want to see that, I don't want to see. It's just so annoying. When I'm planning, I don't want to be ticking 20 different calendars so I can see or not see them. I just want to push a button, which is what I do, which is what I mentioned. I'll go to the month view, M, and then I go to my planning view, 3, and then it just shows me what I need to see for planning. Then when I want to go to the week and look for like time blocking tasks, I go W, push space, then open up the task that I want to schedule, and then just multiple sessions of whatever schedule it is. I'm going to script then, and then. I'm going to edit then, and then it's done. And it's all in the sidebar. It's all in the calendar. It's set. And I don't have to think about it for the rest of the week. Whereas Notion Calendar, you can't do that because you can't see the unscheduled tasks. You also can't set like just to show your planning calendars. You have to click them all. The sidebar is cluttered with the calendars and the monthly calendar, which I never use because I'm on my hotkeys all the time.
Interestingly enough, that was one of my criticisms of Morgan was that
Yeah.
they're really nice. I just don't care.
It's
Like
one of those things you're so used to seeing it, but I never used it. It was there, but I never actually used it. When I went to
I
Morgan,
think
I was like,
I think
do
my
I?
only Morgan thing that I still find annoying is how it always resets me back to the month that I'm in. So if I'm trying to look months ahead, it will always take me back to the month. I know why, it makes sense, but then I keep thinking it's like so I'm looking for next month's fourth Thursday in the month, and then it like flicks back to to this month, and I'm like, wait, what? And that's on my mobile primarily.
Okay, I was going to say I'm going to check because I'm pretty sure on the computer it's 5 week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so it shows 5 or 6 weeks in the month. So it's not actually a full month. It takes like the 2 weeks of the last or a week, the week before today, and then goes forwards 4 or 5 weeks. So it's always overlapping. So at the moment
Yes, it does.
I can see the
Ah,
29th, and when I go forwards, like it then shows like the whole I mean the monthly, but it shows the whole block so a little bit before and a little bit after, so it actually shows more than a month, which is where you get the overlap. So if I'm planning for next week, for example, that's the 12th, I push the arrow key, the 12th is still on my calendar view.
so it is.
But yeah, so and that's where like I was so used to, oh, it's a month, it's January, then February, then March, but Morgan's more than that. So
Mm,
you don't have to work out, wait, what was that again? When was that? Because it does it shows it for you, sort of thing. I love the hotkeys. I'm just DT1. I use that so much when I'm planning. I'm like
nice, isn't it? It's just so nice.
3M to show the month, DT1 to get back to today's view, and then inside. It's just quick.
Fast, it just gets out your way and then you're done.
Yep, yep. Something I wanted to mention about Skiff before we move on to ecological business is looking through some of the videos about Skiff, I heard something that I haven't heard in a while on a tech reviewer channel. They said, oh, Skiff has been acquired by this company Notion, but I've never heard of them, so I don't really know what they do. And I was like, "You what? You who is this person? What apps do they
They're a tech
use?"
reviewer.
Yeah, yeah. I looked at their channel and they review loads of tech like Proton Calendar, obviously Skiff, and loads of other offline tools. I saw an Obsidian video in there, so they're not out the space by any means, but it,
Maybe it's just because they're offline,
th-
whereas
that's
Notion is
the
not offline.
no, yeah, that's the only logical reason I could think that they wouldn't know what Notion is. I'm like, how are you in this productivity space and not know what Notion is? Which is exciting, but also worrying.
Why worrying?
Because if they haven't seen Notion, then they could do the whole, oh, Notion's really cool. I'm gonna go explore that and go waste like 3 months of their life. It's like when you look at like old bloggers, people getting onto the computer for the first time, like, oh, look at this. This is really nice. And it's an old blog that's got loads of scams and ads and sponsored posts and affiliate links in it. You're like, no, don't go down there. Don't look at that. We've learned that this is a bad website. Don't do it.
Are you calling Notion a bad app?
For some people, yes. For some people, yes, it is a bad app. Which I think dovetails quite nicely actually into what is a good app? What is a good environment for someone in business? And how would you explain that through an ecological lens?
Good question. Thank you for that. That was a transition there. Look at that. How beautiful. Well, obviously, the simple answer is it depends. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
yeah, 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 yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Come on, I need step-by-step instructions.
Oh, yeah, of course. Obviously, step-by-step instructions is exactly what business is all about, isn't it? Because it's not complicated or dynamic, and we don't have complicated lives. We just have real simple lives where everything just, oh, do you know what? It would be so interesting to talk to people who actually believe that, who think, who have a simple, simple life where everything just they just have full control of every single thing that they have. Anyway, yes, carry on.
That's me. Like, I do have a simple life when I look at my system because it's organized for
Mm,
me.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if I was to give my life to someone else,
no.
good luck with
As you
that.
as you found out, I think with that video you made, everyone was like, "How do you do all these things?" And I also get the same response. I also get the same response because when my D&D group found out I ran 4 D&D campaigns, they're just like, "How?" I'm like, I basically threw the assumptions that right out the window, and I assumed it was okay and I could, and that's how I started.
I mean, when I look at my calendar, I have currently 4 ongoing projects on the top of my calendar. Then I've got the podcast that's going on today, so I guess you could argue that's sort of 5 projects. But the, that means I have 4 ongoing projects all of the time, and some people struggle with managing one. Yes, there's the scope 2 projects, but when I'm looking at the projects that I have, one of them is a very, very long video essay that's essentially going through an entire textbook. So that's not exactly a, oh yeah, I'll just write 1,000 or so words and make a video about it. No, no, it's a 2 hour long video essay, which I'm currently in the process of editing. So 2 of my projects are 2 hour long video essays with almost 100 sources.
Obviously, you're using AI to write them.
No, no, not at
So
all.
it's so one of the we will get there eventually. I just keep following my train of thought. It's so interesting the AI stuff at the moment. As I'm
About my
looking at
tweet.
that, yes, and also just everyone's like, I'm using AI to write things. I'm using AI for, and I'm like, every time I'm like, okay, cool. I know how to write good prompts. I know how to do it. I have, it's doing that freezy thing. No, yeah, I know how to write good prompts. I know what I'm doing. But even when I write a good prompt, it cannot write what I write. It cannot talk about the topics that I talk about. And
Partly
I'm just,
because it's not trained on it.
well, yes, obviously it's not trained on the ecological approach. And because even when and I showed this to you last Saturday, as I was going through, I was like, okay, let's try. I gave it a little, I just kept having to feed it little bits. It's like, come on, go this way, this way, this way. But the moment you talk about productivity, it's like, bye. I'm like,
Well, that's the thing though. AI is basically a so I'm writing a script for a client at the moment, and the main topic is Google search. And
mm,
looking back at the way SEO works, black hatters, grey hatters, white hatters, all the rest of it with guidelines, what's ethical, what's unethical, etc., etc. The ways people try to manipulate affiliate marketing and the rest of it was to create loads of pages that are very similar, or low cost pages, so they'd hire copywriters, script writers, whatever, to make a blog post, and then they throw their affiliate links on there. With AI, you don't have to pay anyone to do it. You just dump it into ChatGPT and it spits you out some version, some variation of the same thing. And that's all AI does. It spits out a version of things it's already seen before, because it's just predictive text, a very smart version of predictive text. But if it's there before, there's no human experience. There's
mm.
limited expertise because there's not many people with expertise talking about it online. If there was, everyone would have it, but they don't.
And that is particularly a thing with what we talk about because there just isn't. There isn't a blog post you can go and, well, there is, but
They're,
there
they're,
isn't
the, they're the blog
many.
posts that people look at and go, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. Do people keep asking, oh, what recommendations do you have to learn more? I'm like, oh, shit. Danny, please finish your damn video. Even
I'm
so, come
uh,
on, what
I'm
are you doing?
I'm at chapter 8 and I think
Oh,
it's like 45 minutes long.
okay, can I link to Rob Gray? Okay, I need to find a Rob Gray video that won't overwhelm. Okay, then no, I can't do a Rob Gray video. Because I remember, because you sent me like, have a look at this one, have a look at this one. You won't understand any of it, but just watch it and then watch it again and then watch it again. It's like one of the things that I've become attuned to is one, also my language has suddenly changed. I don't know what's happened, but my
You
language has
woke up one
suddenly,
day and you had a different language.
yeah, obviously, because that's how it works, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's stored in the
Yeah,
memory bank,
yeah.
and it's
It's
a
all in
mental
memory.
model that you can apply uh, to the
I
world.
just needed to just it. I needed to do the drills. I just
Yeah,
needed
yeah,
to use that word repeatedly, over and over again, and it was
exactly
fine.
the same thing. Following instructions.
Yeah, exactly. Following instructions, just repeating the same words over and over again. Rote repetition. And
For those unsure, that was sarcasm.
yeah, yeah, big sarcasm.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, it was really interesting because one of the big struggles I had was to not use the language that I've used for so long. Because of course I'm attracted to that language because it's what I've used.
Familiarity, understanding, confidence. Yeah.
And then so I don't know what happened over the last couple of weeks. It's like all of a sudden I'm like, I've attuned to this. I'm like, oh, where did that go from? Where did that come from? Oh, well, yeah, that is accurate. And I think I wouldn't even say my language got better. I am just using the words that are more accurate to my experience.
I like
And I'm
that.
like,
I like that.
that's interesting how that happened. Because I was just talking to a client, and I've been working with a client at the moment, and they are doing a lot. And it was really interesting when I first saw the messages in the group. It was like everyone was like, "Oh, you just need to cut things down and get rid of stuff." And I'm just like, but no, that no, that's not how it works.
Well, yeah, because
If
they're
they could,
overloaded. They're
I
cognitively
know.
overloaded because we have a limit.
Oh God. And it because that was what that my lived experience has always been one where I'm just doing a lot. A lot is always going on all of the time.
But if it's not, I feel like I'm not doing anything, or I'm bored, or I'm just sitting there like, what's the point? I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs. This isn't exciting. This isn't what I
Yeah.
want my
And
experience to
that's
be.
and it was interesting because often everyone just tells you to just do less things. Oh, maybe I do need to cut things out. It's like, yeah, that's one option, but it is not the solution, which is kind of the problem I'm seeing in business coaching and in all of the business world is there is one correct solution or there are multiple solutions. And although everybody says that we're all individual and we all need to be treated individually and we all have differences, it's like, but do this. I'm like,
Get
but
rid of the butt.
like, yeah. And it's
It's like, I was going to say, it's like when lots of people they say all this nice fluffy stuff and oh, this
Mm.
person's really good, really smart, blah 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 blah. But oh, great, here's the but, and that's how I feel people explain themselves when they're trying to justify whatever framework, whatever methodology they use. They say we're all different, we work differently, and it depends on But you can use this framework, or you can use this methodology, or you can use this idea. And I'm like, get rid of the but and
Mm.
just engage with the differences. Accept that there is repetition without repetition. Accept there is invariance in the world. Accept that, I mean, you could go as far to say we perceive directly, therefore, we need to look at each environment individually, not as, hey, I'm doing this thing, because now you have a label, you have a noun thing, you can box it, you can organize it. No, you organize throughout time. You're always organizing. You're not organized, you are organizing.
I've just had a moment of,
I saw.
yeah. One of the things I often talk about when people started coming, and this goes all the way back before I had this philosophy. Oh, I hate having to always put out fires and always do this. And I'm just like, but that's perceiving directly. And I'm just like, wait, so am I saying we need to stop trying to, oh, that's interesting. Because if you stop trying to indirectly perceive and instead directly perceive, it means you deal with the stuff that's right in front of you, I suppose.
I would change the wording slightly because the way that we look at the world, the way that we look at the world, we're always directly perceiving. So
Yeah, so you
people that
can't
don't,
not. That's true.
yes, so you can't not directly perceive, but if people are using a traditional approach and they follow the assumptions that they are indirectly perceiving, then they may betray the actions. That is one of the distinctions that I think is difficult for other people to grasp when we are explaining this philosophy, which is something I've had to tackle inside of my comment section recently.
Mm, mm. And then of course you just use ChatGPT to write that code. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
not gonna
ChatGPT, can you
lie,
just answer
wouldn't
this
that
for
be
me?
nice? Sometimes, it's like, wouldn't that be nice? It's like, no, 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 ChatGPT, no, 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 stop it. Just
It'd be
get in the.
literally like teaching a child. It's literally
Mm.
you're like, right, can you just do this thing for me? No, not like that. No, 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 that's going to break it. No,
No,
don't destroy it.
no, no, don't say that. Please don't say that. Don't use that. No, 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 that's not. No, no. Okay, fine, I will write it myself. And I have got to the point where I'm just spending more time trying to tell it what to do versus actually
Doing
doing
the
it.
thing. Yeah. But that's why I didn't use AI to start with, because I think I was a little bit further along than you when AI came out when it comes to
Yes.
writing. So I found myself having to ask AI to do what I wanted it to do more than just if I was to do it myself. So I'm like,
Mm.
you know what, stuff this. I'm just going to write it myself. And what's interesting about the YouTube comment is the YouTube comment, I responded within a minute because I was on my phone downstairs and I just like I was already on YouTube on my phone because I was looking through a previous comment. Then I got the notification.
Maybe
So I
that's why.
but because I responded so quickly, maybe. But I'm sitting there thinking, if I saw that comment, if I copy and paste that into ChatGPT, get the response, I would then have to fiddle around with the response before I can put it back into YouTube.
I would actually turn around when they said thanks ChatGPT. I would go, no, this is what ChatGPT would have said. I would have actually done that because then you would see a very, very vast difference. And I think, like I said to you on Twitter, it's about the language because it uses such fluffy language. The thesaurus it swallows to say things. I'm just like, oh, please. Oh.
I wouldn't even say it's a thesaurus though, because it doesn't use that many complicated words. Because most people online don't use complicated words. It just adds so much fluff to a sentence. Instead of having a 10-word sentence, it will use 25 words. And I'm
Mm.
like, condense it, summarize that. But as soon as you say summarize that, now the sentence meaning completely disappears, and it brings something else in. You're like, no, that's you're saying something else now.
Yeah, it's
It,
frustrating.
very frustrating. So how do we do this? How do we do this ecological business stuff?
Don't do it.
Well, you're always doing it.
Well, yes, yeah.
So how do you do I guess, a constraints-led approach to business. I don't think that's kind of accurate, because
No.
constraints-led is typically learning, whereas business is you're acting. How do you take an ecological approach to business would be I guess, the tagline.
Yeah. I think it is perceiving what is in your environment. It is seeing what is around you in your business. It is looking at what you see or perceive and what behaviors that allows you to do. It gives you an opportunity to act, because often what happens in business is everyone talks about this bit of the planning part, but never about the doing part. Whereas I think one thing I've recognized in my work is I'm very much about the doing part, the action, the behaviors that you want, the goal-directed behaviors. Where are you trying to go? Okay, what in the environment is available to you? Is there anything? Can you, well, it is, but can you attune to it? Are you aware of it? Okay, no. All right, what needs to change? How do the tools, what affordances can the tools provide for you to be able to directly perceive, to be able to do these things that you wish to do? That's sort of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, there's a lot of jargon in there.
There is a lot of jargon in there, and
There's a
I'm
lot of
working.
potential for confusion as well. How would you explain that to someone? Like, if I am someone that traditionally uses working memory, cognitive load theory, encoding, retrieval practices, and the rest of it for learning, so I'm in my business and I want to learn how to be more efficient in my business, but I'm getting a little stressed. Obviously, you'd go through the coaching, asking, questioning, behaviors, blah blah blah. But how would you pitch the difference between the ecological approach to traditional approach? What do you see
I
as the
don't know
differences?
whether I would pitch it because
Why would someone listen to you if you haven't pitched it in some way?
they're tired of it not working.
So it's just
But they've
I'm gonna
it
test this to see if it works, sort of thing.
it is I've tried everything else. No matter what I've tried, it's not worked. It's like I've tried basically done everything traditionally, it's not working. Somehow I'm still disorganized. I'm still struggling with everything. I'm still fighting fires every single day, and I don't want to be. That's kind of when people come to me most of the time, at least in this current thing.
Hmm.
And that's often when people start thinking about what I do, because it's when everything's gone wrong.
Hmm. I'm just thinking when it comes to the promotion of the approach.
Good question. I think what I have right now is this thing of what do you want? What do you have? What do you do? That's the best way I've got at the moment. It's like, so what do you want? Which is the goal directed. Like, what direction do you want to go in? Where do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? What do you want? Because often that can be ignored. And I always used to struggle with, okay, this is what I want. I just want to be able to earn this amount of money doing these things at this time during these hours. This is what I want. I want to be able to coach people and spend a really good I want to do these things. This is what I want. I know what I want, but I don't know how to get there. So what do you want? What do you have? What's available to you? What do you have? Okay, cool. I have this program, I have these things. Because we're always doing in business. It's very much an active process. But often what we do and what we have are very just not working in alignment with each other. So the behavioral integrity is not there. They want to do this, but they only have this. Okay, cool. So what do you do now? What do you do? So you want this, you have this, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? How do you want to act? Okay, cool. Let's start with this. Oh, I don't know. Okay, cool. Well, you have this and you have that and you want this. So let's start with this. And that's when I introduce the constraint-led approach then. I think that is the most non-technical way of explaining it.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good.
Cool.
Pretty good. I think it matches up with what most academics uh not do, but have in their mind when they're talking about frameworks. And when you look at coaches, it's the same thing inside of all sport. They want to win the game, they want to win the match, to win the
Yeah.
competition, whatever it is. There's the want. How do they do that? And then you've got all of the other coaching elements that gets into that, which is obviously part of the process. Where
Hmm.
I'd be interested uh, to see in practice, or what I'd be interested to see in practice, is what the practice actually looks like. Because talking about it is one thing, but
Mm,
practice is another. And obviously, because the ecological approach is within action, because we believe that perception and action are coupled,
yeah.
what does the practice of business look like from an ecological approach? When I think about the practice in traditional approaches, there is a okay, I'm going to work from this time to this time because that's the time slot I've given. They're the limits that I have, cognitive load, blah, blah, blah. So the practice of business, the actual hours that you're working in a traditional approach, I would imagine would look different to the practice from an ecological approach. But what do those differences potentially look like? Because obviously there's going to be various,
Yeah.
lots of variation.
It is very much dependent on the situation, and I'm using an example here which can be misconstrued as the only way. But for me, what's worked is the concept of periodization. It is taking bits of time and the way that I've set up my calendar, which often is the hardest part for people in business is knowing where to begin. The first thing I constrain is something to do with what they're doing in their week or what they're doing in their day because I just feel like I'm not getting anything done or I'm doing all these things. The first thing I look at is, okay, cool. So what are you doing? Like, what's happening for you? And knowing exactly what is happening across not just business. So one of the big things that I believe is it's not just business because it's not just business. It is life. So when I sit there going, I do business coaching, I do, but it's also everything else on top. It's kind of, okay, cool. So how does this, if I wasn't to niche and wasn't to market, it would be an ecological approach to life
Yeah.
because business is only a small system within the bigger system of your life. And so I go everywhere. I touch everything as much as possible because otherwise it's just there's no point. It's a waste of the person's time. That's like, okay, what's happening here? Okay, cool. This person is not very well. Okay, cool. So that means what? Someone is not unwell. What do you want to do? Okay, cool. Oh, sometimes it's very much just going, okay, you can stop, you know. It's that, have you thought about this? Have you thought about just not doing all of these things? Oh, yeah, but I want to look. I said, I understand that. Fantastic if you want to launch, but will you let us work within the reality of the situation with my, as often my phrase, what is the reality of what you're like? What do you want? What do you have? What do you do? Like, what do you have? I have an ill child. I have my hearing is playing up today. When I use my own example, like I'm struggling with it. I'm exhausted. Okay, well, this is what, well, what do I want? Oh, I want to get my work done. I'm like, okay, cool. But what you have and what you want is not working right now. And it's instead of it being a snapshot, it is a bigger view. It is seeing the full picture as
Stick.
yeah, but I hate that word. I don't it just because of the connotations with holistic. It's just yeah, meh.
Because of how it's been used in the past. And I feel that the ecological approach, maybe 5 years, 10 years, who knows when, will get to a similar stage where people are saying that they're being ecological, where they're not. I'm already seeing that sort of transition inside of some fields, inside of sport, where they're saying they have an ecological approach to coaching, but they don't. They add a constraint, which is what the traditional approach does as well, because they add constraints in, say, okay, instead of passing, we're going to pass in straight lines, or you're going to kick the ball against the wall. They are constraints. They're adding constraints to the environment. Does it mean that it's ecologically based? No, because it's a philosophy. So I can see a lot of people saying, oh, yeah, I take the ecological approach because it's if it does find success, it will become a buzzword, which is similar to holistic. And what I want to try and do is maintain the integrity of the words, really, because I
Yeah.
don't see, as I mentioned in a recent video when I discussed Tiago and Nick's frameworks, they use their own words, their own terms, but they don't really add anything. If anything, it adds complexity to try and explain what's going on. Because why do we need a map of content or a table of contents or an outline file or a dashboard or whatever you want to, why do we need those? It's a file. It's a file that links to another file. That's all we need. Like
Yeah.
atomic notes. Why do we need atomic notes? It's just a file with words in, and one file is bigger than another. We don't need this concept of atomic notes. Same with smart notes and Zettelkasten. We have a collection of notes, which are files, and some are bigger than others, some link to others. We don't need these new terms. Whereas the ecological approach isn't, it is a label, but it's not a label of a thing,
It's a label of a methodology, not a methodology,
a
a
philosophy.
philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a philosophy that you could use as a rationale behind your behaviors and experiences. So, is it a label? Yes, but it's not a label where you would add so many constraints that you can't do something. Most labels, the way they're used, atomic note, where you can't have a massive 20,000 word file because that's not atomic unless you change the meaning of the word atomic, which now you have different meanings of the same word, whereas you can't have different meanings of an ecological philosophy.
Mhm.
It's an ecological philosophy. It either is or isn't. You can't
Yeah.
have different meanings of it, which is where the noun labels that people use are confusing. They're just confusing. When I had this discussion inside of the comment section of one of my videos about the ecological approach, they were saying that they didn't understand the point. They were saying, "Oh, you're just overcomplicating it." They also said that I'm trying to sound smart. I'm like, how is me saying like, the same words making me sound smart? It doesn't. But saying or turning things into verbs, it changes so much with
Yeah.
so little. But it
Yeah.
only changes a lot if you fully grasp what it means to be ecologically valid or following the ecological approach.
Mm.
However, finding that is and getting to that is difficult. How we push that, how we probe that, really don't know. And I think as we alluded to, it comes down to what it looks like in practice, what the actual work looks like. How does it differ?
I think it's interesting because one of the things that I've been thinking about from my business is because this is actually incredibly what we do here is a lot of practical sense. However, I push this in a business sense. I mean, this episode would probably be the only one I could actually go, here's me talking about this. But also, no one really cares. They just want to be able to do the thing they want to do. We love it. We love it. Like, it's really interesting to discuss this. We actually have a great time. And so one of the things that I'm doing when I'm promoting this podcast is like, right, so this is you want to know how I do the things I do, like what I do, come and talk to me. We'll go do it. We'll go do it. But if you want to know and understand our thinking and my thinking behind what I do, come and watch this. Come and listen to this. Because then you'll get to hear me struggling with the same concepts and me like discovering and well tuning and the emerging concepts that happen when we're
Learning.
talking. Yeah, learning. Crazy. It's crazy, right?
But that's the thing. We like right there is an example. I used to do it in the past. We try and attach these words to what it is
Mm,
that we're experiencing, but it's just
mm,
learning.
yeah.
But so many people have learning boxed up in this, oh, it must happen at school or it must happen when I'm practicing. No, learning happens through experience. If you
Mm,
gain knowledge, which you can define in any way, in any way you want through epistemology, but if you gain knowledge, which happens through experience, empiricism, then you're learning, which means as you experience, you learn. So you don't not learn. You're always learning. So when people say, "Oh, I learn better like this or like that," no, you are always learning. And it's so much easier to say, "Yeah, you learned this or you're learning this," than, "Oh, I'm trying to put this in my memory bank so I can retrieve it better and I need to encode." No, shut up. You're just learning.
one of the things that I this was really useful for me because just go, okay, cool. This is what this is what it is. One of the things I've always tried to do is just make it as easy as possible because it's so easy to get caught up in all the really cool fancy language that we use that we like, that is fun, that is just interesting to dissect it. But when it came to the practice of doing it, none of
It,
the words
you have to go
themselves.
out of your way to put the word into the explanation.
Yeah. And so it was very much like I've had the what do you want, what do you have, what do you do for a while. But it was the like I suppose it was all the stuff around it that I was trying to like, okay, cool. Is this here? Is this that? But talking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's because it's so simple. It's like if it's too simple, then why isn't everyone doing it? Because it's simple.
But it's simple because you've attuned and you have expertise in that organization. So when you explain it to someone else, they're going to be like, whoa, okay, there's a lot there, or there's a
Mm.
lot for them to digest, or they haven't fully grasped what it is that you were talking about. So they have potentially oversimplified it because maybe they're looking at one or two things where when you say something, you're thinking of 15, 20 different things.
Yeah.
It's the same as when this is a really cliche, I guess you could say, example. If you give something to a child, they are more likely to come up with more opportunities for behavior than an adult, because an
Yeah.
adult typically has been conditioned. What can you do with a bottle? Well, you can drink out of it and you can fill it up. What else could it be? A child's like, well, it's a rocket and it's a pen and it could be who knows what. And when I work with some people, or when I worked with some people in various different sports, if you give them an opportunity, they will give you the proper answers. Like, yeah, but what else? A good example that I'm thinking about right now is when I was coaching a ladies football team. They, for context, they weren't a bad team, but they didn't take risks. They did everything by the book and followed instructions of the coach. So what I did is we played a football game. It was 7v7, and there were no goalkeepers, right? No goalkeepers allowed. So the goal is open, and you can shoot from wherever you want. But none of them took a shot unless they were like close to the goal in shooting distance. And I'm like, why didn't you shoot? Look, we played for about 10 minutes, and it was 0-0. And I'm like, there's no goalkeepers. Why has no one scored yet? So I said to the girls, I was like, why hasn't anyone scored yet? Oh, they're defending really well, and we're struggling to get through these lines and pass this and get. I'm like, yeah, but why didn't you just kick it over the defense? Well, that's not fair because there's no goalkeeper there. Oh, what? Yeah, but there's no goalkeeper there, so kick it. If it's an opportunity, go kick it in the goal. And as soon as I said that, that they argued with me and said, yeah, but that's not going to be like the game. I'm like, if the goalkeeper is standing on the edge of their box and you look up and you think, I can kick it over the keeper into the goal. If you haven't practiced that ever, you're not going to take that shot and you're not going to score from the halfway line or score from outside the box. Or if the keeper isn't paying attention, like you're not going to take that shot. So what happened is they started shooting. What did the defense do? Well, instead of sitting back just in their lines, they now had to push the ball. And now that they were pushing the ball, the people on the ball, their first touch was challenged because now instead of them just passing it around and not really being challenged, the defense are like, well, I can't give them space to shoot, so I'm going to have to close them down. So was I working on their ability to shoot from long distance? No. I was working on their ability to have a good first touch because they're being pressed so much. Being pressed because the defense needed to press them, otherwise they'd just kick it in a goal. But if they don't see the affordances, they're not going to learn all those other things that they could see in that environment. And that's the way that I would look at business. I'm like, okay, here's the environment. I'm going to give you limited constraints. I'm going to take the goalkeeper out of the goal. If they don't take those take those chances, then they're not going to learn the other things you may want them to learn as the coach. Which hopefully that resonates with you, and you can see sort of how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much just taking stuff away. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing the annoying thing where I just go, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
overhead.
So I have a question for you because I know this is going to come out after our little live, or not our, but a live chat with Morgan. I'm going to speak with David about their soft launch Notion integration. It's being like pushed into the public on Monday, so that'll be out. Where do you see Morgan going? Morgan competing? I don't know whether you saw my recent video about Francesco's task calendar planner thing, because obviously we discussed Notion at the start of this as a
I
workspace
watched your
tool.
video and I agree. Yeah, it's just it feels so limiting.
Expand.
It's like, so you have this type of tool. One tool can only do one thing and there is nothing else around it. There are no other affordances. I had this discussion with someone literally in the community that I'm part of. It's like, oh, I'm using Apple Notes to store all of my tasks and I've got all this information here and I'm doing all these things. I need someone to put it. Okay, cool. My first question was, do you use a calendar? And the answer was, I'd be interested to hear your own. I know you didn't answer my question. Do you use a calendar? I mean, I assume you do. Most people in business do use a calendar because meetings.
Yeah.
That is the one constraint that matches all of it.
Visualizing time, knowing where you need to be. I think most people in business without a calendar would like implode.
Yeah. I'm like, do you usually? Oh, I hate my calendar. Cool. The moment someone says I don't like using my calendar or I don't like my calendar, I'm like, okay, cool. So I won't go there. But unless I hear them say I don't like my calendar, so I don't use a calendar, it just X, Y, Z, whatever reason. Unless it's overwhelming, and I'm like, may I introduce you to Morgan?
What interests me is how people manage their time without a calendar. Because I recognize that there is a list and people work by lists of things. I get that. My mum does that downstairs. Like she's got a diary and she'll list things out, but it's still a calendar. She still has dates in her diary and she still has lists of things to do.
Yeah.
And when you look at a task app, they are tickable. There are tickable actions in there. But my mum's diary downstairs where she writes stuff down, that's not schedulable
Mm-mm.
like through time. It's schedulable through day, but that's it. The granularity of the scheduling is limited, but that's the effectiveness of how schedulable the tool, or in this case, the pen and paper, is. So some people don't need as much granular organization as others. And if they don't need the granular organization, then a traditional task app, something that just can list stuff, works, which I would imagine is that person that's using Apple Notes. They don't need granular schedulability. Wow. Affordances come up some really cool terms.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. It's very much how much can because often when people speak to me that I'm overwhelmed by all of the things I've got to do. Okay, so have you scheduled them? Do you need more granularity? Do you need to have that in? Oh, well, I have lots of responsibilities. Lots of that. I say, I
Show
know.
them so you can see them.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've been really doing for myself. Because yes, I could use project managers. Yes, I could use task managers. In fact, it's interesting for me as I've been going back into business. I'm now using Morgan and Obsidian together again, which I'm just like, when I need to brainstorm and put it all down, as you say. And I'm like, what would I actually use instead? And I'm actually going, what would I say instead? Because I'm not brainstorming. I'm not storming from my brain. What am I doing? Well,
Thinking.
well, yeah, when I'm thinking, I do thinky things, big thinking.
Don't overcomplicate it. You're just thinking.
When I'm thinking, I go into Obsidian and I've started using my Vault again. I've set it all up and it's all nice and it's fun. And was, I was actually watching videos and making notes on videos again, which I hadn't done in such a long time. They were Rob Gray videos.
So lectures.
Yeah, basically a couple of his smaller lectures, which were really interesting actually. And then I was thinking about this whole what I'm doing in my business and really just putting it down somewhere so that I could see what's going on. And it wasn't really working in Morgan because it was date based, obviously, which is the point. Whereas I didn't want a date-based function. I just wanted to be able to put things down and move them around. So Canvas, obviously, and notes. So I could just write a bunch of stuff, bring all my products,
Readability.
readability. Oh, yes. And so I was bringing in all my products because I'm like, okay, cool. Let's start looking at all of the things that I have. Because I have so many things that I've created over the years that I don't remember. So I'm like, right, I need to have them in a place where I can go and go, okay, cool. This is this. Is the marketing. What do I have? What do I want? What do I do? What I have is a bunch of stuff I've made over the years, some of which I need to change. Yeah. What do I want? Well, where do I want to go? I want to bring the ecological approach.
I was going to say you needed to add a the at the
Yeah,
start
I
of
know.
that.
It's like the ecological approach into business because it's just life changing and it's life changing in the most simplest way possible. It is just annoyingly simple, and it doesn't require effort.
I'm
Once
curious.
yes.
Have you linked the Obsidian note to a Morgen project? Or a
No,
Morgen task, I should.
no, I haven't.
Interesting. Because when you said project management, I was going to ask, where? Where do you do your
I don't
managing of projects?
I don't really have projects. My projects have just become a little bit higher. So I have um lists. My lists are almost my projects now. And then I have kind of projects inside of those projects, I suppose. Anything action orientated
Pause.
is
What would you class as a project? How would you categorize a project? Or what meanings do you get from the term project, I guess we could say? Because when I hear project, it's everyone has a
talking
different
about it is
interpretation.
time bound. That's about it. Like, and even then I'm still like,
Because from Tiago's definitions, a project is different from an area. But for me, I don't see them as different.
no, I'm just looking at mine now. I'm like, they're all the same. They're basically like, so I have just a bunch of areas. My projects are areas. They are Tiago's definition of areas. So I've
Hmm.
got stuff like I've got Simplicity Specialist, which is the top list, which is just everything encompassing for my own business, like the stuff that I only do for me. So that's my clients that are mine, that are just mine, and then I have Team EBG. I have a list for the work that I do directly with Lizzie and their group. And then I have an area. Interestingly, I go a little bit more granular with my D&D groups. So I actually have areas for each D&D group, probably because it's such a wishy-washy, a lot of things happening, which is quite interesting. I don't have a D&D section. I have Covenant of Chaos. I have
But I reckon that changes over time.
mm,
So
yeah.
where you're at now will probably be different in the future.
Yeah, yeah. And then in that, I have, I'll just do simplicity specialists because we're talking about the business stuff. I have specific one-shot projects. So, for example, I'm streamlining my write message as I'm noticing patterns that I'm like, boop, boop,
It's-
boop, boop, boop,
So
boop,
would you
boop.
say a project is tickable?
Yeah, but no, sometimes.
Tickable, not completable.
Oh, tickable, yes. Completable, no,
And
because I'll always come back to it. Yeah,
there we go. And the
yeah.
reason I say that is because there are some actions that are completable, but some that are tickable. And I think most actions are tickable. And for me, tasks or traditional like versions of tasks and projects are the same thing. They are both tickable. Some tasks are completable.
Mm.
And some projects are completable, but some tasks aren't completable because they're recurring, and some projects aren't completable because they develop.
A good example of this in mine, I've got streamline my route message. Now, to be fair, I was about to say that's tickable. I'm like, no, it's not, because I'll always be continuing to streamline that as I go. But
But it's tickable,
right,
it's
sorry,
not completable.
it isn't completable, but it is tickable. So I can tick that, and then I will probably make it again. And then I've got stuff that is just never completable. There is stuff that I'm just always going to be doing. I don't even know whether it's tickable. No, I don't know whether it's ticked. So why is it there? Cool, awesome.
But that's the question. If it's not tickable, then what is it?
I think it's a category. It's a constraint that I have added to use that language. So I've got, you
That's what
know,
task lists are. They are
yeah.
constraints.
So it's like delivering for client, MISC business systems, getting traffic, managing, creating offers. Like those are my main like areas, if you will, in my business that I'm considering. I want to be considering all of the time. And as I'm doing that, I'm kind of like, okay, cool. 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 And this obviously not some of this is actually based on Lizzie's work and what she does. So her stuff, but I like it. It works for me. It helps to because there are so many moving pieces and other things that I'm trying to do that being able to have that constraint is really helpful. And then I put stuff inside of it. And it means I can keep a balance, I suppose, and just keep track of what I'm doing and when I'm doing it.
So would you say you have a project manager?
I suppose it is, and I am project managing in, I suppose, but also no, but yes.
Why'd you say no? Because I was apprehensive about calling Morgan my project manager,
Yeah,
but when I addressed what it actually means to me, like what the tickable, completable, readable actions are, well,
yeah, yes, but it's not a project in the traditional sense that is commonly used.
in what way?
As in, it's not a thing that if we use Tiago's definition, which seems to become the big definition these days, like, but could it work? I suppose it could work. I suppose so.
When you think about a project manager, Trello, Asana, Notion, if you want to go there, like those sorts of
I love that. I love that. No, 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 no. No, if you want to go there, because no one wants to go there.
managing projects in Notion, you got to be familiar with databases. Recurring tasks don't really exist. Subtasks are a bit of a pain in the bum. Getting any sort of like due date, schedule date on a calendar stuff, that's a hacky workaround. Working out formulas and stuff. Yeah. But when you look at those tools, Trello, Asana, like I say Notion, and you look at Morgan, what does Morgan from a feature set not
And
have that
oh,
those do?
nothing.
I mean, it's just the views. It's the Kanban view. If you don't use a Kanban view, then what? I mean, Morgan's calendar view is better than Notion's calendar view.
Yeah,
Even with Notion calendar, I would argue.
yeah. Didn't understand Notion Calendar. I don't see why it's so good.
And when I think about Trello, what does Trello and Asana and ClickUp have that Morgan doesn't have? Well, it's the shareability. It's the
That's it.
shareability of actions.
And the calendar scheduling. I think for me, just being able to boop, boop, done, boop, done, done. It's just that right there. The affordance of that is just nuts.
Exactly. So when you look at traditional project managers, apart from the effectiveness of managing minor tasks with additional features. So when you're looking at something like Linear's got different stages of a task, and you can move them into Kanban boards. If you don't need that granularity in the actionable, tickable tasks, or the actionable, I don't even know what I'd want to call them, like tasks or events, because to me they're the same thing, like slots.
Actionable actions.
Yeah. The tickable actions. Yeah, if you don't need that much granular information about tickable actions, then Morgan is a project manager.
Yeah, but I'd also argue that you probably could repurpose most of the features in Morgan to do that. So instead of like the hierarchy of low, medium, and high, you could actually have that as in progress. Like you could set that as progress tracking.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
So
see.
my no priority is this is an idea, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it. The low priority is this is an idea. I've made a file for it. I've got a couple of sources. Medium is I've got a couple of sources. I've worked it out, but I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to do this thing. High priority is let's do this thing.
Yeah,
And then it's scheduled. And once it's scheduled, it's on my calendar, so I'm going to do it.
yeah, yeah. But it also like for me specifically, because obviously one of the I think differences between like what we both do is I obviously have the responsibilities of family that is there as well. And
Mhm.
sometimes I don't have the place, I can't do it when I want to do it, when it was scheduled. And I think what I love about Morgan, and I've turned this function on in my Morgan where it will just move it to the next day. What I would like to see is being able to put it in my little slots. That would provide me with way too much joy.
In
Where
slots.
yeah, so I have these blocked parts of my calendar which are when I'm doing stuff.
Right.
So being able to, instead of having to manually move it over, because it will move to the next day, but it'll just put it anywhere. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's just a subtle shift. That'd be
So
something.
while we're on the topic of Morgan and calendars and time management and stuff, I want to run my idea by you.
Oh,
An ideal calendar with levels. Right. This may require a bit of explanation.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, at the moment in a calendar, we have events and we're shown events or tasks or whatever you want to call them. They are actions. We'll
Mhm.
use actions.
Actions is accurate, yeah.
Yeah. So you have lots of actions that are scheduled. But at the moment, if you have more specific actions within it, so say script video,
Yeah.
and you have granular actions, so read these sources, then write or explain or summarize that source, then do heading 4 of the thing. You have those essentially subtasks, those smaller actions, but that could be within a larger action. At
Mm.
the moment, when you look at any calendar, any project manager, any task, anything that has actions visually shown, it doesn't look nice. You can't, like, it's difficult to hide that action within the action. And so you can't really have a subtask shown on the calendar schedule with the main thing there.
Mm.
So that's where the levels start coming in. And okay, so if we were to schedule a subtask on top of a main task or a more main task, I should be saying actions there. If we have a sub action, if we have a smaller action visually shown on top of a larger action, that's the levels. If we then bring in the ideal calendar element to that, if we were to have a, I guess, ghosted or transparent version hovering over our calendar for, I want to be writing right now, I want to be doing meetings right now, and you can see that as a transparent thing, then when you're planning and, huh?
Gimme. I want it.
Because then you can just look at the next day and go, okay, I'm meant to be writing here.
Now, please.
What shall I be doing? Let's just schedule that big action over there. These are the small actions I need to be doing. I'll do that one first, do that one next, do that one next. To me, that would make scheduling things so much easier because it takes away the thinking because you've already got an ideal calendar. And then if the ideal calendar for the next week, you look at the ideal calendar to go, damn, someone's booked an event where I'm meant to be writing. I need to reorganize my ideal calendar for that day or that week.
Reorganize? Oh, you can reorganize things? Isn't it static that you have to do it at that point? Because obviously there's no flex. Obviously, you have to do it perfectly.
The reason I bring this up is because I'm already doing this in Morgen. The only issue at the moment is my ideal calendar is a calendar with tasks, with tickable actions. So when
I want one more layer. I want to go one more layer deep with my because you've got obviously the you've got the list. You've then got. I mean, actually, I could thinking about it, just reorganize this and make it work. But still, you got your list. You got the well, the big headline action, if we're to use the word
yeah,
action,
yeah, the big
and then you've
actions,
got the sub, and then
smaller
you've got
actions.
the smaller actions,
We'll just go big and smaller because it's easier.
and then I just want to go one more.
Really? You want to get that granular?
No, I don't. I just need to reorder my lists.
I was gonna say, like,
I can just use I have just figured out how to make this even better. I just need to create a list for each of the bigger things. So the business systems, the delivering for clients, the getting traffic, and then I can just use tags to color coordinate it so it's on simplicity. Anyway.
the bigger things is what my ideal calendar is.
Uh,
So my ideal calendar is, well, for me, it's educational science writing. So that's one channel. Then it's DH, Danny Hatcher
so
writing.
for me, it would be something like, delivering for clients, which
Yeah.
is a simplicity specialist task. It's working on getting traffic. It's working on managed creating offers. It's, working on a build for a client if I'm doing Notion stuff. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I have that as my ideal calendar, and they're repeated tasks. Well, that's what they're called inside of Morgen. So I now have repeating actions. So the ideal calendar goes across all of the weeks. And when I'm planning out my next week, so if I'm just going to go to my week view and then push W, I can see, well, it would actually help if I was clicked on Morgen and not on Zoom. So I can see next week where my ideal calendar should be. So I can see, okay, I'm meant to be editing then, writing then for that client and doing this for this client. But I can see on Tuesday that I've got a family member coming down because an event's been put in. So those ideal slots, I either need to tick off to say, yep, I've scheduled something for that time, because it's a tickable action.
So you tick, so you have them as, so you have these ideal slots as actions, and you
Tickable
tick.
actions.
Oh,
Because once I've
that so
scheduled
they are
something in there,
to use their language, they're tasks.
yeah,
They're just tasks,
yeah.
and then you tick those tasks off for that
Because
block.
I have my big actions in my sidebar, and then
Mhm.
I have the smaller actions underneath them as subtasks, to use Morgan's terms. Then when I want to script, so say I'm going to script a video, scripting may take 3 days. So I have an estimated duration time for the script repeated task, using Morgan's terms, as 2 hours. So it's going to fill out a 2 hour slot when I drag it onto my calendar, and I'm going to drag it into one of those ideal slots for that channel. And because you have multiple sessions, I drag them. I drag the thing into 3 different slots. I then tick off the ideal calendar, like for each of those, to say, yes, I've scheduled something in this time. And now it's going to stay in the sidebar as scheduled for multiple sessions. So I can see in the sidebar when I've scheduled it. The due date of the smaller schedule can be whenever I want it to be. So say I want to script it by Friday, but it doesn't go out until Sunday. The due date of the small task is different from the due date of the big task, big action. Sorry, I'm gonna, because I literally just changed how I'm saying this. It's gonna take a while, but yeah. So the big action, then is so the big action is on my all day, spread across the week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. The smaller actions are multiple sessions throughout the week that have a different due date to the big action, and they're scheduled in ideal slots in my
So
calendar.
do you track it? So for your periodization, do you have like those in there? Or are they just because you're so attuned to it? You because my from my understanding of periodization is it's basically a block of time where you're doing something.
Periodization as a concept is
The concept,
far-reaching,
yeah.
but
But how we're talking about it in this very constrained environment, like, is that do you have those? Because that's what I have right now. So what I have right now when it comes to my period of time, I have either one of three things. I have a work block where I'm just working, which I need to get more granular with because I'm not doing the things I want to do when I want to do them. And it's not, so I'm going to basically use what you're doing because that makes sense for me. So
it's a slight adjustment of what you're
yeah,
doing.
it's a tiny adjustment which makes a big difference. And then I have a couple of I have flexi blocks, which are because things just go wrong all of the time, and there are lots of things as a parent that you just have to just drop everything and run. I have flexi blocks which I just slot something in if I need them, and so I can and I also have the flexi blocks as like part of my D&D prep is a flexi block. But I am wondering whether that is not helpful. But yeah.
So my question would be, what is the difference between a flexi block and a block?
See, that's where I was just like, well, one is important and the other is not. And I'm like, that's a load of shit. It's all important. Hence
Yeah.
why I just went, why is it not just a normal block?
Yeah, so it's just a block. And
Yeah.
that's how my ideal calendar is. I will say, because I know roughly how long it's going to take me to do things, there are some ideal blocks in my calendar that are quite often left empty. So Monday, for example, I have blocked out for my Danny Hatcher channel.
Mm.
And I have 6 hours blocked out for my channel because typically it would take a 2 hour session to script, 2 hour session to do the recording stuff, and 2 hour to do the editing. I set myself 2 hours, so because I prefer 2 hour slots, I know I can
Same.
get the thing done. And I know if I go any longer than 2 hours on any one thing, typically I start to not really pay much attention. So 2 hours is for me a limit. It's a constraint that I add to my calendar.
Yeah.
However, most of the Danny Hatcher videos are done in 2 hours. I
Mm.
script in like 10 minutes, I record in half an hour, and then I edit in an hour, and it's done. So I then have 4 hours in the day to do whatever I want. And there are other slots at the weekend where I've deliberately left it blank. Like in my ideal calendar, I just leave it blank. I'm like, do what you want there. And some people will say this is really like bad, but some people say it's really good. I have a scheduled slot for it. I call it social. From 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock is social. Most of the time, it's downstairs with family, but it could also be going out with friends or meeting up with whoever. And that is my social slot. That's not on my ideal calendar. That's on my tasks calendar. I call it tasks calendar, but that's always there because I don't want there to be anything else. My ideal
Mm,
calendar is what I ideally like to do. For me, I need to do the social stuff. Otherwise, I just work the whole time. Similar with lunch. I need to put lunch on my task calendar because it's not a ideally you'd have lunch. No, I need to eat lunch. Same with dinner. I need to have dinner. I need to do my meds. But the other things that are not so needed, like writing a script, ideally I would like to do this.
yeah. Yeah.
And Morgan does that. I can't do that well with a list of things because I imagine that in your task in your to-doist list, you've got all of those ideal blocks as tickable tasks. And then you're like, right, have I scheduled something for that time? Yes, right, it's down here. But then this, yes, it's down here. No, 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 you can't do that in a traditional task app
That makes me cry.
because you would
It's that
need this.
whole idea.
You'd need the schedulability to be able to visualize the ideal calendar to make it simple. Yes, Todoist is starting to bring in a calendar view. TickTick has a calendar view, but I think it's on the premium plan. Yeah.
And this is all what we're talking about is free.
Yeah.
That's
Unless
what
you're using integrations or have more than one calendar account.
do you need more than one calendar account?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't.
Because you could have, no, neither do I. Because you could have sub calendars. Like in your Google Calendar, you just add another calendar and then that's not
Yeah.
classed as a calendar.
Yeah, you can just bring your Outlook calendar into Google Calendar.
Yeah.
But that's what I told my sister to do. Or I told my sister to do, because she has literally one calendar on Outlook, which is her university calendar, and then everything else is in Google Calendar. So I said to her, "We'll just sync your Outlook calendar with Google, and then just name it university, and then go to Morgan on the free plan with your Google account that has the Outlook calendar synced. As soon as the Outlook event is synced in the Outlook calendar, it syncs to Google Calendar, which means Morgan sees it." So you could do it on the free plan and the task stuff on the free plan, tickable actions.
Same.
Yeah, and this is a review or a comparison that I'm actually looking to do on the Danny Hatcher channel is compare Todoist, TickTick. I'm arguably putting Google Tasks in there as well, and then Morgan. The reason I put Google Tasks in there is because people don't use Google Tasks because it's so bad, but when I look at it, it does what you need to do.
True.
And just as an aside, if people want to be able to add a task to Morgan, a traditional task in Morgan, they can do it through Google Tasks.
What?
If you have an integration with Google Tasks in Morgan, you can talk to your Google Assistant. It will add it to Google Tasks, and Morgan will bring it in.
As a task.
Well, yeah, because it's in Google Tasks. It's the same as the Notion integration, Todoist integration. So you just talk to your calendar, to your phone. Apologies if you got one around you, but say, "Hey Google, schedule a task for tomorrow to check my Morgan calendar," and then it will do the "Thank you, you checked tomorrow, blah 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 blah," and then it'll add it to Google Tasks. And Morgan, if you have the integration with Google Tasks, all of this,
There's an
well,
integration with Google. Okay.
and it brings it in. So then you can add tasks to Morgan via Google Tasks. The only limitation being Google Tasks is on the integration, which is the Morgan Pro plan. That is literally the only limitation.
Sure, I did not know that Google Tasks existed because that's basically changing everything for me now. I know. Cool.
But that's
Because
the
one of the
only.
things I really wanted to do, one of the things I really wanted to do, which actually I've solved anyway because I realized I just need to press Command K or whatever the button is. I can't remember what it is.
Control Shift K.
Thank you. I now realize I can actually just do that here because I didn't realize I actually could do that and it would actually pop up the window, but it does.
Yeah, it pops up the window and does all this. The only frustrating part about the Control Shift K rather than hitting the command when Morgan app's open is it doesn't have the prompts. It doesn't. But if you remember them and you know what they are, it doesn't matter. Like when I say prompts, I'm talking like exclamation mark for priority, greater than for task list, like those things. It shows you when you're in Morgan, but when you do the global command, it doesn't show you. It's a bug that they haven't got around to working on because they've been doing other stuff, which is understandable because their feature request list is freaking massive. But yeah, so when I look at Morgan, I'm like, Morgan isn't a calendar app. It's not a task app. It's not a planner app. It's a time management tool that is doing far more than so many other tools, and it's free. This is what frustrates me when people look at Morgan. They say, "Oh, that's expensive." It's like I think it's £13, so £15 a month. If you pay monthly for the pro plan, or it's
Eight,
nine like
eight.
£7 or £8, 7.33 or whatever. Yeah, and it's like $9 a month if you pay annually. But that's if you need the integration, the task integrations, which I don't think most people actually would need if they use Morgan Tasks, or if they have another calendar. But just dump it all into Google Calendar account.
I didn't realize that Google Tasks was a thing because one of the things that I wanted to be able to do, because I've been, so I use Raycast, which is completely irrelevant to you because you don't have Raycast on Mac, which sucks for
I
you.
got an iPad.
I don't think it works on iPad, but yeah. So Raycast is basically a replacement for Spotlight, which is fantastic, and the stuff you can do with it is really cool. And one of the things that I wanted was a Morgan
Spotlight.
integration. Yeah, basically you can press Command Space and you can search and do a bunch of stuff. Normally it's
I thought
just
that was Alfred.
yes, it's like Alfred, but I think Alfred sucks, whereas Raycast does not. I didn't like Alfred; it was way too complicated and just got annoying.
Right.
Whereas Raycast is really it's extendable by the community, whereas Alfred is appearing to just be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, people who know Alfred more than I do, like Alfred is locked down by them, whereas Raycast is community driven a
Right.
lot. I don't actually think that's true. But anyway, I like Raycast better. I just do. And one of the things that it has, I wanted it to have was a Morgan integration. So rather than pressing, before I thought I had to press Option C and then I could use Command Shift K, which don't have to, I could just type it in there. Because when I open my Obsidian Vault, I don't actually open Obsidian. I just literally press Command Space and go,
Obs.
personal vault. I just go vault, and I choose my vault from my list. So D&D, and I just open it from there without actually having to open anything else. And it's quite nice. And so if with the Google Tasks integration or the Asana integration, I mean, I don't like Asana, so
Well, I don't think the Asana integration's there yet with Morgan.
If Google Tasks works well and it comes in as a task, not an event, which is the thing that annoys me.
Yeah, it's just the same as Todoist, Notion. Like, have
Do
you
I
have you
have
played
a
around with the integrations?
Not much, no, because I just use the normal one.
Or you just use Morgan?
Just use
The,
Morgan.
the only limitation with the integrations is when you bring them in, Morgan doesn't have a two-way sync with the integrated tool because most tools are finicky about all of that sort of stuff. But if you're in Morgan, it doesn't matter because it just like the Google task will appear on your task list inside of Morgan. It'll have the due date in that you've set, and that's the due date, like the actual due date of the thing, which Morgan takes. And then if you want to schedule it, you just schedule it onto Morgan, and then Morgan gives it the scheduled time, which you can adjust to do whatever with.
But it doesn't tick it on the other way. That's
Yeah.
all.
It does the tickable stuff. It just doesn't do the due date. There's no due date sync. And when you schedule it in Morgan, it then doesn't schedule it in whatever app it is.
Yeah, it doesn't change the due date to that schedule.
Yeah. So if you schedule it inside of Morgan, then Todoist won't schedule it. One of the issues that I've seen with the Todoist integration, which is it's such one of those like, oh, I've synced with this and this and this, and now I've got a syncing issue, is that if someone has synced their Google Calendar with Todoist, two-way sync, and then they sync Todoist with Morgan, when you schedule a task from Morgan that's in Todoist, because Todoist is already synced to Google Calendar and Morgan is now syncing it again to Google Calendar, it'll appear again in Todoist, so you get a duplicate task in Todoist. Not great. But if you're in Morgan, it doesn't matter. But if you use Todoist or Google Calendar, it does. So your Google Calendar may look messy. I don't think that really matters. But it does look messy in Todoist because now you've got a duplicate. You've got the original one you made in Todoist, and now you have another one from Morgan, which came from Google Calendar. You could get rid of the syncing between Todoist and Morgan, but then you wouldn't be able to create a task in your calendar to go to Todoist, which is what some people do. Which, I mean, if you're in Morgan, just make the task in Morgan, but yeah. I think that's one of those transition friction points that people may need to get around. But again, like, why are you still using Todoist? That would be my question.
Yeah. The only reason I would want to use Google Tasks is because I could do it from Raycast, and that's it. If Morgan would allow me to, if their API was strong enough for me to actually know what I'm doing.
To do what? Why are
Well,
you using Google Tasks with Raycast? If you're on a computer with Raycast, just add it to Morgan.
yeah.
The only reason you'd need to use like a Google Task integration for bringing it into Morgan is say you're in your car and you're like, oh, there's that thing I need to remember. Just like open up your phone and say, hey, remind me when I get home, or remind me later, remind me at 7, whatever, to do blah 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 thing, or remind me this idea that I had, blah blah blah, say thing, and then it will go to Morgan. So, but I don't drive enough to have ideas in the car enough to need that. And I'm not, sorry, people, I'm not lazy enough to have to say things to a house device to write it down, or just pick up my phone and type it.
What if you don't have your phone?
I'm in the house. I just go upstairs and grab it from my room, or I go downstairs and grab it from the living room, wherever it is.
Oh, how the other half live.
I do the moving thing, one
Ugh.
foot in front of the other. So.
Oh, it's just fun.
But yes, speaking about moving, I do have some exercisey cycling stuff to do later. So, is there anything else you would like to add on before we close it out?
No, pretty good.
So, Notion are trying to dominate the world, but Morgan are slowly catching them up when it comes to time management.
Going back to Notion hurt.
Yes. I'm actually quite fortunate in that most of the people that I work with have decided to adopt Google Docs instead of Notion. So I don't have to work with Notion.
I mean, I build systems in Notion, so I do.
Yeah, you can have fun with that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what Morgan is going to do in the future. I recognize like the second half of this podcast was basically us talking about Morgan and how great Morgan is, but it is a great
And
tool.
everyone loves it when we talk about our opinions on apps.
Yes, 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 they do. But yeah, so if you haven't joined the Morgan Discord, join the Morgan Discord. You don't have to use Morgan. There are people in there talking about using Linux stuff, calendar stuff, all the other tools as well. But yeah, that would be the best place to talk about all this action management. So yeah, speak to you all next week.